Right now, somewhere on the water, an outboard engine is dying. The owner has no idea why. The marina won't answer until Monday. And the tow bill? It's going to hurt. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. The same 10 failures have been killing outboards for decades. Different brands, different price tags, same problems, over and over again. Some of these issues cost $5 to fix. Others will destroy a $15,000 engine if you ignore them. Mechanics know exactly what breaks. Manufacturers know too. But somehow, most boat owners never find out until it's too late. Today, that changes. We're pulling back the cowling. We're exposing every weak point, and we're showing you exactly how to fix each one before it leaves you stranded. Quick question before we dive in. Have you ever been stuck on the water because your engine failed? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and ring that bell, because we cover what the marine industry won't tell you, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's get into it. Every diagnosis begins with a single question. Does this engine have life left in it? Before you chase electrical gremlins or tear apart fuel systems, before you spend a single dollar on parts or a single hour on labor, you need to know one thing. Compression. It is the heartbeat of every internal combustion engine, the fundamental measurement that separates a motor worth saving from one destined for the scrapyard. Compression is simple physics. The piston rises, trapping fuel and air in an increasingly small space. That pressure, typically between 100 and 150 pounds per square inch in a healthy outboard, is what makes combustion possible. Without adequate compression, spark means nothing. Fuel means nothing. The engine will crank, it will turn over, but it will never run. A compression test takes 10 minutes and requires a $40 gauge. You remove the spark plugs, disable the ignition, and crank the engine while the gauge measures each cylinder. The numbers tell the story. Healthy cylinders should read within 10% of each other. If one cylinder shows significantly lower pressure, you're looking at worn rings, damaged valves, or a compromised head gasket. These are problems that cleaning carburetors and replacing spark plugs will never solve. For the purposes of everything that follows, we're assuming your compression is solid. The engine has the mechanical foundation to run. What it needs now is the right conditions. And that starts with spark. The spark plug is where fire begins. It seems almost too simple to matter. A small metal electrode suspended inside the combustion chamber, tasked with igniting a compressed fuel-air mixture thousands of times per minute. And yet, spark plug failure remains one of the most common reasons outboards refuse to start or run poorly. The failure modes are predictable. Carbon fouling from overly rich fuel mixtures coats the electrode in black deposits, preventing the spark from jumping cleanly. Worn gaps from thousands of hours of heat and erosion weaken the spark until it can no longer ignite the mixture reliably. Cracked ceramic insulators from impact or over-tightening create pathways for electrical current to escape before reaching the electrode. Here is what most boat owners never learn. New spark plugs are not always gapped correctly out of the box. Every engine specifies a precise gap. The distance the spark must travel between electrodes. Too wide, and the ignition system struggles to push current across. Too narrow, and the spark lacks the intensity needed for complete combustion. A $2 gap tool and 30 seconds of verification can prevent hours of frustrating misdiagnosis. The fix is straightforward. Inspect your plugs every 50 to 100 hours of operation. Look for deposits, erosion, or discoloration. Replace them at the first sign of wear. They cost between $5 and $15 each, and installation takes 15 minutes. Always use the manufacturer-recommended plug type. Marine environments demand specific heat ranges that automotive plugs may not provide, but the spark plug only delivers the fire. It does not create it. Follow the plug wire backward, through its rubber boot, along its insulated length, and you arrive at the component that transforms 12 volts of battery power into the 30,000 volts needed to jump that gap. The ignition coil is a transformer. wound with precision copper wire and sealed in protective housing. It is engineered to last for years, even decades. But the marine environment is relentless. Salt air corrodes. Vibration fatigues. Ultraviolet radiation degrades plastics and rubbers. Temperature swings, from freezing dawn launches to engine bay heat that can exceed 200 degrees. Stress every material. Over time, the protective coating cracks. Moisture finds a way inside, and the coil begins to fail. The symptoms of ignition coil failure are maddening precisely because they are inconsistent. The engine starts fine one morning and refuses to fire the next. It runs smoothly for an hour, then suddenly misfires and dies. The intermittent nature of coil failure sends owners chasing phantom problems through every other system, replacing parts that were never broken. But the evidence is there if you know where to look. Examine the coil housing carefully. Hairline cracks in the rubber coating. Dry rot spreading from the edges inward. Discoloration or swelling that suggests internal breakdown. Any breach in that protective layer is a pathway for moisture, and moisture destroys electronics with quiet efficiency. You can test a coil with a multimeter, measuring primary and secondary resistance against manufacturer specifications. But visual inspection catches most failures before they become complete. The fix is replacement, $40 to $150 depending on your engine, and the installation takes 30 minutes to an hour. Apply dielectric grease to every connection. It creates a moisture barrier that extends the life of the new component significantly. Spark plugs and coils account for the majority of ignition failures. But there is a third component in the system, one that varies so dramatically between engine types that even experienced mechanics reach for their reference manuals before diagnosis. Older outboards use mechanical points beneath the flywheel. These are physical contacts that open and close with engine rotation, triggering the coil at precisely the right moment. They require periodic adjustment. The gap between contacts must be set exactly to specification, and the timing must align with piston position. Points wear. They pit. They corrode. And when they fail, spark disappears entirely. Newer engines replaced points with electronic systems, power packs, CDI modules, stators, and triggers. These solid-state components have no moving parts, which makes them more reliable in theory. In practice, they fail in ways that are far more difficult to diagnose. Testing requires model-specific procedures, resistance values that vary by manufacturer and year, and equipment most owners do not possess. This is where professional mechanics earn their reputation, not through intuition or guesswork, but through systematic diagnosis guided by documentation. If you want to troubleshoot ignition systems yourself, invest in the CDI Electronics Practical Outboard Ignition Troubleshooting Guide. It covers virtually every make and model with step-by-step testing procedures. The knowledge it contains has saved countless engines from unnecessary parts replacement. One final note before we leave the ignition system. Check your kill switch. It sounds absurd. It has humbled mechanics with decades of experience. The lanyard gets pulled, the switch gets bumped, and an engine that has nothing wrong with it refuses to start because a simple safety circuit is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Verify the kill switch position before you diagnose anything else. Now we follow the fuel. The fuel system is the single largest source of outboard failures. Not because engines are poorly designed, but because modern fuel is actively hostile to the components that must contain it. Ethanol-blended gasoline, mandated by environmental regulations across most of North America, absorbs water from the atmosphere. It degrades rubber compounds. It leaves varnish deposits when it evaporates. The fuel lines connecting your tank to your engine are under constant chemical assault. Cracks form in rubber that was supple last season. Connections that are held tight begin to weep, and air enters a system that demands a perfect vacuum to function. The result is fuel starvation, engines that start and die, that run rough and stumble, that leave owners stranded without explanation. The diagnostic requires patience, but no special tools. Squeeze the primer bulb and watch. Examine every connection point between tank and carburetor. Watch the tank fitting where the fuel line connects. Watch the primer bulb itself, both inlet and outlet. Watch the quick connect fittings that make fuel line replacement convenient, but create additional failure points. Watch where the line enters the engine and where it connects to the carburetor. Look for drips. Listen for the hiss of air escaping. A healthy fuel system will prime until the bulb becomes firm and hold that pressure indefinitely. If the bulb softens over time, air is entering somewhere. If you hear whistling or hissing while pumping, you have a leak that needs immediate attention. The fix is simple and inexpensive. Replace any line that shows cracking, hardness, or discoloration. Tighten or replace hose clamps that have corroded. Verify that your tank vent is open. A closed vent creates vacuum that mimics fuel starvation perfectly. Use Type B1 rated fuel line, which is specifically designed to resist ethanol degradation. Total cost, $10 to $50. Time. Investment. 1 to 2 hours for a complete inspection and replacement. But even with perfect fuel lines, fuel must still be pumped, and the fuel pump is where the next common failure awaits. Most outboard fuel pumps are elegantly mechanical. A rubber diaphragm flexes in response to pressure pulses from the crankcase, drawing fuel on one stroke and pushing it toward the carburetor on the next. No electricity required, no complex electronics, just rubber, springs, and check valves working in harmony. The problem is that rubber ages. Diaphragms that were supple and responsive become stiff and cracked. They lose their ability to flex. Check valves that snapped open and closed with precision begin to stick or leak. And the pump gradually loses its ability to deliver consistent fuel flow. Here is the mechanic's diagnostic secret, one that requires no pressure testing equipment and no special tools. If your engine starts but dies after a few seconds, pump the primer bulb while it is running. Keep pumping steadily. If continuous manual priming keeps the engine alive when it would otherwise die, your fuel pump has failed. You are doing its job by hand. The replacement is straightforward. Most fuel pumps are held by 2 or 3 bolts, with one fuel line entering and one exiting. Remove the old pump. Install the new one. Reconnect the lines. 30 minutes to an hour of work. $30 to $80 for the part. The alternative, rebuilding the old pump with a kit, saves money, but requires patience and fine motor skills. Tiny springs under tension will launch themselves across your workspace the moment you open the housing. For most owners, a new pump is worth the modest additional cost. With spark confirmed and fuel delivery restored, we arrive at the component responsible for more outboard failures than any other single part: the carburetor. The carburetor's function sounds simple. Fuel enters, air enters. They mix in precise proportions and flow into the engine as a combustible mist. But achieving that precision requires passages smaller than a human hair, jets and orifices machined to exact specifications, metering fuel with remarkable accuracy. When contaminants enter the fuel system, they migrate toward these restrictions. Rust particles from aging tanks, sediment that settled during storage, the gummy residue left behind when ethanol-blended fuel evaporates, water droplets that found their way past inadequate filtration. All of it accumulates in the narrowest passages, and the jets clog. The symptoms are familiar to anyone who has fought a stubborn outboard. Hard starting, rough idle, hesitation under acceleration, an engine that runs at some throttle positions but stumbles at others. The carburetor is responsible for approximately 85% of all runs poorly or won't run diagnoses on carbureted outboards. The repair demands thoroughness. Half measures create recurring failures. Every removable component must come out. Every passage must be cleared. Every gasket must be inspected. Begin by removing the carburetor from the engine. Disconnect the fuel lines, remove the mounting nuts, and lift it free. On most small outboards, this takes 5 minutes. Place the carburetor on a clean work surface with good lighting. If you have never disassembled one before, keep your phone ready. Photograph each step. Document where every component came from. Reassembly requires correct orientation, and memory is less reliable than images. Remove the float bowl first, the reservoir at the bottom that holds fuel ready for use. Inside, you will find the float mechanism, a buoyant chamber attached to a needle valve. When fuel fills the bowl, the float rises, pushing the needle into its seat and stopping flow. When fuel is consumed, the float drops, the needle withdraws, and fresh fuel enters. This simple mechanism maintains consistent fuel level throughout operation. With the bowl removed, extract the float by sliding out its pivot pin. Note the needle that comes with it. Now begin removing every jet, every adjustable screw, every component that can be unscrewed. The main jet, the idle jet, the low-speed needle, the high-speed needle if equipped. Remove the top plate and its gasket. Continue until you are left with the bare carburetor body. Now clean everything. Carburetor cleaner in aerosol form is your primary tool. Insert the straw into every orifice you can find and blast solvent through. You should see fluid flowing freely out the other side. If a passage is blocked, soak the carburetor body in a cleaning solution overnight and try again. Every jet must be crystal clear when held up to light. Every passage must flow without obstruction. Inspect your gaskets before reassembly. Compressed, torn, or hardened gaskets will leak air into the system and destroy your careful calibration. Replace any that show wear. They cost pennies and prevent hours of frustration. But cleaning alone is not enough. The float mechanism demands attention as well. A stuck float is among the most common carburetor failures and among the most overlooked. The float must rise and fall freely with fuel level. If the needle sticks in the closed position, fuel cannot enter, and the engine starves. If it sticks open, fuel floods the carburetor and overwhelms the engine. Test float function before reassembly. Hold the carburetor body so the float hangs downward. It should drop freely under its own weight with no resistance. If it sticks or hesitates, examine the needle for wear or debris. Clean the needle seat thoroughly. Replace the needle if its tip shows any scoring or deformation. Float orientation matters as well. Most floats have a reference line molded into their surface. This line should sit parallel with the carburetor body when the float is at rest. If the float sits crooked, canted, to one side, or tilted at an angle, fuel metering will be incorrect. Adjust the small metal tab that contacts the needle until the float sits perfectly level. With the carburetor cleaned and reassembled, one critical adjustment remains before reinstallation: the idle mixture setting. The low-speed needle controls the ratio of fuel to air at idle and low throttle. It is the carburetor's fine-tuning mechanism, and it must be set correctly for the engine to run smoothly. After any carburetor service, the baseline must be reestablished. The procedure is universal across virtually all carbureted outboards. Gently seat the needle by turning it clockwise until it stops. Do not force it. The needle and seat are easily damaged. Then back the needle out counterclockwise, typically 1 full turn to 1 1/4 turns. This establishes a starting point. Start the engine with the carburetor installed and the outboard in water. Allow it to warm to operating temperature. Now adjust in 1/4 turn increments, waiting 20 to 30 seconds between changes for the engine to respond. Counterclockwise adds fuel, making the mixture richer. Clockwise reduces fuel, making it leaner. Listen to the engine. A stumble or hesitation indicates too lean. A blubbering exhaust or black smoke suggests too rich. Find the setting where the engine idles smoothly and responds crisply to throttle input. Document your final setting. Write it down. The next time you service this carburetor, you will have a proven baseline to return to. With spark confirmed, fuel delivery restored, and carburation optimized, we turn to the system that prevents all of this work from being destroyed in minutes. Cooling. Outboard engines are raw water cooled. Unlike automobiles with their closed-loop coolant systems, outboards draw water directly from the lake, river, or ocean. Beneath them, this water circulates through passages in the engine block, absorbing combustion heat, and exits through the telltale stream visible at the back of the motor. It is elegant engineering that eliminates the need for radiators, coolant reservoirs, and complex plumbing. The heart of this system is the water pump impeller, a rubber paddle wheel mounted on the drive shaft inside the lower unit. As the engine runs, the impeller spins, drawing water upward through the lower unit and pushing it into the cooling passages above. The impeller is the single most critical maintenance item on your outboard. A $15 rubber component stands between normal operation and catastrophic engine destruction. Impellers wear constantly. The rubber vanes that were straight when new gradually curl from spinning against the pump housing. They crack from age and chemical exposure. They shatter from dry starts. Running the engine even 15 seconds without water can generate enough friction heat to melt the vanes completely. A failed impeller means no cooling water circulation. Engine temperature climbs rapidly. Aluminum components expand. Pistons seize against cylinder walls. Head gaskets fail. Within minutes, an engine worth thousands of dollars becomes scrap metal. Replace your impeller every season or every 200 to 300 hours, whichever comes first. Never start your engine without water. Use flush muffs connected to a garden hose or test only when launched. When installing a new impeller, coat it with water pump grease for lubrication during those critical first seconds of operation. The investment is minimal. The protection is absolute. But even a perfect impeller cannot cool an engine if the thermostat has failed. The thermostat is a temperature-controlled valve positioned between the water pump and the engine block. It remains closed when the engine is cold, allowing rapid warm-up to operating temperature. When that temperature is reached, the thermostat opens, permitting cooling water to flow through the block. When a thermostat sticks closed, from corrosion, debris accumulation, or simple mechanical failure, water cannot circulate regardless of how well the impeller is pumping. The engine overheats. Owners replace impellers unnecessarily. The problem persists. Test a suspect thermostat by removing it and submerging it in hot water. You should see it open visibly as temperature rises. If it remains closed, replace it. Running without a thermostat is not recommended. Engines require operating temperature for proper combustion efficiency and oil viscosity. These 10 problems are not mysteries. They are patterns, documented across decades of marine service records and owner experiences. Each one is preventable through routine inspection. Each one is diagnosable with basic tools and careful observation. Each one is fixable by anyone willing to learn. The brochure promised reliability. The knowledge to achieve it has always been available. The only question is whether you choose to use it.